Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to DriveTime, the new educational podcast series. As many of you may be in the car, I know a high number of stats show that people listen to podcasts in the car, hence why this is called DriveTime. Hopefully this series can bring you one or two golden nuggets as we continue to share things that you can add to your current leadership or management style. And that's the reason for doing this educational content. Now, DriveTime is thanks to Professional Partners Education and our major partners, Hall Chadwick, and our other supporters, Profit Master, iKeep, Corporate Lifeline, and Lloyd's Auctioneers. Now, I'm always excited to chat to new guests, and I think that's the one thing that I really enjoy. Sometimes people can hear it in my voice, sometimes people can't, but I am excited to chat to new people about different topics, especially topics that are involved in, let's call it growth. And the theme today is going to be about growing your practice, growing you. We've got a little bit of a different twist to it as well. But before we get into that, let me introduce you to our guest, Simon Allsop. Welcome to DriveTime.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Mate, Sydney-based, we were just chatting offline there. So yes. Sydney-based, how's life up there?
It's still rainy up here. Look, life is good, but bloody hell, it's been wet for a long time up here. Looking out the window today, it's still coming down. So anyway, we'll see how it holds up.
And to still think we're coming closer to winter, so hopefully things calm down.
Oh, completely. But I feel absolutely robbed of summer this year. It feels like it's, been on the treadmill, and we just didn't get that summer break this year that we usually look forward to. So, but anyway.
Very true. Very true. Now, mate, we're going to talk about growth today and growing a practice. So, but before we get into that, because I know there's a number of key things that we're going to chat about over the next 30 minutes or so. So maybe give everyone a little bit of a heads up to who you are. Who is Simon Allsop? What drives Simon Allsop?
Yeah. No, sure thing. Well, I guess, leading up to this podcast, I did take the opportunity to actually look back, and it was a bit scary to realize that I've been 22 years now working in accounting. So I first started in KPMG in the year 2000 as a cadet, straight out of school, in their audit division. And for me, that was my eye opener to business, I guess. I mean, through school, I'd always picked up holiday jobs, done bits and pieces, and so enjoyed the thrill of working and that sort of thing. But KPMG was the first time wearing a suit in the city, and look, just by chance, I was 17 because I was young when it came out, but as a youngster in a suit, just felt awesome. There was a buzz. And so look, by chance ended up in the audit division of KPMG. And that was probably the foundation of like process controls and just what it's like working in a business. And so I think some of those things will flow through to some of the lessons down the line. And I mean, but ultimately it was the importance of process and controls. And when process and controls are right, that's when you're getting results that you can actually trust and make decisions on. And it was an awesome starting point. I mean, exposure to some great people, some great companies, was working on accounts like Optus or Virgin Mobile when it was in Australia, and all these household names. So it was a buzz. But so I was there for about 7 years until got qualified and all of that. But I think there were two things in that role that frustrated me, and more so just kind of as the years went on. And I think one of the things as an auditor that frustrated me in that role with KPMG was just the time lag between generating a financial report and delivering it to the client. Like, look, I was pretty low down the food chain there, but from what I could feel, by the time the audit team had found an issue, it seemed like the client had already knew about it and had already solved it. And it was like we were just coming in too late with all the different processes and everything that we had to follow, because it'd be, in some instances, like 2 or 3 months after the year end that you'd be delivering the reports. True. But it felt like with all the knowledge of this global powerhouse, surely we could be delivering something of more value. And look, there are other parts of the firm and maybe they were doing different things, but in my little view of the world, it felt like you could deliver more value with what we knew sitting inside there. And I guess that frustration just kind of grew over the years. And the second thing that kind of frustrated me with that job was like I'd sit there in my desk, and you could almost see how life would unfold in front of you, and you'd slowly move from your little cubicle desk in the middle of the office, edge by edge, closer to the window, and then maybe if you stayed there for the 30 or 40 years, you might even get that office in the corner window. And it's like, I don't know, as a 20-something-year-old, it was like, surely there's more to life than this.
But
Surely,
to be fair, sorry to interrupt you.
yeah.
That was one of the great things that used to drive us back then, wasn't it? It was the corner office with the view. That's what we thought. What was the be all and end all?
True. There was a bit of ambition in order to get the fancy leather chair in the office sitting in the corner. And look, in that day, KPMG down on Shelley Street, the top floor was the partner's floor with the private dining room and all of that. So, right. I mean, there was a bit of a lifestyle thing to go there. But I think,
yes,
I don't know. So, sarcastically, I'd think, well, that just helps tie you into the office so you'd never have to leave. So, but it was like, I don't know. I think as a youngster, there is this sense of adventure or sense of wanting to choose your own destiny almost, rather than having one that was planned out for you. And I mean, absolutely nothing against those that want certainty and those that want a clear career path. But for me, I think there was a thrill of an unknown or something. And it was like, I have to give something else a go. I want to try and back myself and see what happens. And look, I think initially choosing accounting as the career path was a little bit because it could open the door to any industry, and like you could have exposure to working in any industry. And I mean, it's a big world out there. It's hard trying to figure out what direction you want to go. And so I think there was still a little piece of that. And so yeah, look, in early 2007, I said, thank you very much, and then went and started my own business, and then very abruptly realized that the fortnightly pay slips stopped coming in. And all of a sudden, it was on yourself to make ends meet in a business. And so very quickly, you get a very different view of the world, not having the expense accounts or the regularity of pay or anything like this. And it was a steep learning curve. So I mean, I started in the bedroom of, well, in the second bedroom, it was a 2-bedroom apartment in Mona Vale back in the day, and little by little built up a client base with the little bit that I knew about accounting, trying to interpret financial reports. And very quickly I learned that there are a lot of small businesses out there that are run by people who haven't had any financial training or didn't know the difference between a profit and loss or a balance sheet, or why they should even look at one when they can get a feel from how much money is in their bank account as to how they're doing as a business owner.
Yep.
So it was a steep learning curve, even just running my own business, to learn how to do a bank rec rather than review a bank rec. It's embarrassing that didn't happen naturally. So, but it was interesting. But little by little, I guess you try and figure out what actually matters to these small businesses that we're working with. And so one of my frustrations at KPMG was that we were too slow in getting information to the businesses we were working with. So in starting up my own business, it was like, I want to get as close to real time as possible. And in 2007, MYOB basically had the entire marketplace tapped up. So look, you'd be turning up to clients' offices or slowly building a team that could turn up to work at clients' offices to go through things. And then it was, funnily enough, it was through a social event that I was at that I met this guy Dylan who worked in a payroll company, who's like, mate, you need to check out this thing called Xero and get on board. And it was like, at that point in time, there were a few cloud-based software providers that were floating around. Like, I'd kicked the tires of Sasu, and there are a couple of others that I can't even remember the name. And it was trying to figure out, is it a fad? Is it a sham? Or is it the next big thing? And in the early days, it's so hard to tell the difference between those things. But I liked this guy Dylan, and he had a payroll add-on for this thing that just did basic accounting. So I was like, look, I'll give it a go, and all of that. And that turned out to be one of the best decisions we ever made. And so when one of our core values was to deliver real-time insights, and then all of a sudden there was this software package that meant we could do it any day of the week without having to travel to client offices and all of
Yes.
this, it aligned perfectly with the mission of that business. And so we ended up, building a good sized business, largely off the back of being an early adopter with Xero. And so knew a whole lot of the top guys inside Xero, and did the journey with these guys from doing Xero roadshows that initially had just a handful of people, or Xero cons that had a handful of people, to now turning up and seeing the thousands that
Thousands. Yeah.
turn up. It's a fantastic journey to have seen and been a part of on the way. And so, yeah, that particular business did grow and grew pretty quickly, off the back of, I guess, delivering helpful information to business owners. And so before we knew it, there were we had a whole floor in North Sydney. We had to get a little bit closer to the action than up on the beaches if we wanted to get the right people and be available for meetings with businesses who wanted to talk about what we were doing. So moved into North Sydney, started up in Melbourne, had people all over the country, basically, servicing what we're doing. And a lot of lessons learned in growing a business that we might talk about. But got that to quite the size. And then the opportunity presented itself to actually sell that business in 2000, at the end of 2016, so 9 years later. And given the passion for, I don't know, for business owners, there was an inkling in there that it's like, wouldn't it be cool to actually have bookends of owning a business, starting from your lounge room 9 years ago to a growth story. And look, there was some buying and selling of shareholdings and bits and pieces in the middle there too, which was I guess the first-hand experience, and then ultimately I purchased that back. But the opportunity presented itself to actually sell out completely. And so, again, one who likes a bit of an adventure or a bit of the unknown took the
Yeah.
opportunity. So anyway, took that in 2016 to I guess complete the business owner journey from starting to exiting. And then did some consulting, had a bit of freedom for the first time in a long time, and then just a couple of years ago started up iKeep, which I guess is what takes a lot of my time today, and I guess ultimately how we've crossed paths to connect and have a chat today. So
Yeah, brilliant. Now, look, again, one of the things that we've spoken about in the past, how you can deliver more value, let's say. And things when we spoke off air was around, one of the realizations was, how do I deliver? So maybe you can, if you don't mind sharing with us, how did you come to that conclusion to start off with? And what was your process to identify how you go about delivering? There's firms that have turned the corner. Yes, they've gone fully cloud-based, but they're still, let's call it, they're still on the tools. They haven't really worked out how to. And once they work out the how to, the challenge is to find the time, because time's usually the greatest factor of stopping me doing things. I don't have the time for that, PJ. So if you don't mind sharing, can you go into a little bit about detail?
Yeah, look, good question. And I mean, look, value has been defined by so many different people as different things. I think at the end of the day, you need to figure out what value means to your client. And one of the first things I learned fresh out of KPMG was that a business owner couldn't care less if their bank reconciliation was done. And the reason they couldn't care less if their bank reconciliation was done is because they didn't know what it was. So, but if you started to use the terminology that they understood, it's like, oh, do you need a list of an accurate list of who you've got to pay? Oh, yeah, I need that. Do you need absolute clarity on which customers still haven't paid you yet? Oh, yeah, I need that. I think one of the key lessons, obviously that's oversimplified, but one of the key lessons was to actually try and put yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking to. If you can understand what's important in their world, you'll very quickly be able to connect with them and understand what's important. And delivering what's important to who you're talking to is ultimately what delivering value is. So you might have a business owner that's juggling a family as well as a small business. I mean, for these guys, you need to deal with them differently to someone who might be on an absolute just not have those other commitments, but have an absolute drive to growth and have a business just to get to the next capital raise or to get to the next hurdle that they've set. Other business owners, depending on the structure of the business, some businesses might just need some insight on their cash flow. They might just need a simple plan on what's the cash flow going to look like in a month's time inside the business based on where we're sitting at now. Do I need to work harder, or am I working hard enough to not have to stress? And I think the whole premise of delivering a value-added service. I mean, I've been to plenty of accounting conferences where they're like, look, compliance is dying, you've got to get to value add, but they never really define what value add is. But I also think the reason they don't define what value add is because it is unique to each business owner that you work with. And it's just a simple conversation, and it's about being human, I think, at the end of the day, and understanding that it's other humans running businesses. Have a chat and figure out what matters to them. I mean, there's some basic groundwork that different industries will have different KPIs that you need to report on. Hospitality will be different to a online retail business and all of this. I mean, you've got to know your baseline about what's important in each industry. But if you truly want to deliver value and build a long-lasting relationship with a client, put yourself in their shoes and figure out what actually matters the most to them and deliver on that. And I think that's been a key to how we've grown all these businesses. Understand what's important and just regularly deliver and report on that.
And is that something, for example, that you, one, you've got to find the time to do, but to get out there and just ask, as you just said then, get out there and just ask clients without any, because most firms in the past with their SMEs, their clients, well, what's he coming to visit me for? Is he going to charge me for this? That's always at the back of their mind.
Yeah.
What's this going to cost me? Because again, they don't, I think you raised before, in terms of value, that's probably what they see. They don't see the value, they see the cost. So very big difference in the way that the client may look at things. So I think the way you put that, then put yourself in their shoes is so important.
Yes, agreed. And I mean, to kind of go back on what you raised there about price fear, that was one of the first things that I just eliminated in starting the first business. You've got to have fixed fee monthly retainers so that clients aren't afraid to call you and worry whether they're going to get charged for it.
Yep.
And I think, look, one of the if you want to use a catchphrase, one of the growth hacks was to actually have fixed monthly retainers that get debited from a client's account on the first of the month, covering your base level of services, not all the bells and whistles, but covering the base level of services on the first of the month, so that they're never afraid to talk to you. If I had to have an accounts team that chased receivables and had to count up timesheets to figure out how much to bill, we wouldn't have been a BRW Fast 100 business in the first business. I, as a youngster, wouldn't have had the cash or capital to fund a growth like that. We literally had to use use the business money in order to fund the growth, and we could only do that with a cash flow positive model. And a cash flow positive model required basically almost a nil debtors situation, which again in accounting is a little bit weird, but it's like, if I'm going to give this a go, I'm going to give it a real nudge.
Correct.
And I am a youngster. There is no pot of gold that I've got to draw on. The business had to find a way to do it itself. So
very true.
Yeah.
That's just that last 3 minutes there is priceless to anyone listening to this. It's they're the key things. So let's stay on that for a second, because I want to sort of go into, there's probably a lot of things that you've learned about growing a business, or certainly your first business, that got you to where you are today. Maybe is there a way that you can maybe identify the top three learnings, let's call it, to growing your first business? And probably at the same time, in business, we don't go out there to make mistakes. They're just things that you don't know. What you don't know, you don't know. But are there
Yep.
key things that maybe top three again that you can share with us in terms of what were some of your learning mistakes? So mistakes are going to happen,
Yep.
but we learn from them and we make it so we don't make them again. Do you mind
Yeah,
sharing that
yeah.
with us?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. One of the easiest mistake that comes to mind that I made, which I see it happen in a lot of business owners we still work with today. Business owners love chasing and getting distracted with new things, whether it's the new piece of software that you've just seen at a Xero conference or the
I
latest
was about,
gadget
I
that's
was
out there
about
on
to
the
say,
market.
that's exactly what XeroCon does.
I mean, there is so much cool stuff there. And so
Yeah.
I'd regularly be going out to these conferences to learn the next great thing. And then I'd come back into the office and I was like, guys, guess what? Next week, we're going to change our entire practice management system because this one's the new one that has all these bells and whistles and all of these things. And one of the lessons, look, it took me years to learn, but I'll summarize it now. It's when you're deciding what software to use in your business. Number one, you need to figure out what the smallest software stack is that gets the job done and reports on the metrics that you need in order to make the right calls inside your business. Number two, when you've built a business and it is more than just yourself, it's absolutely critical to get your team member buy-in. Getting team member buy-in means you make them a part of the decision process inside your business when it comes to big decisions you've got to make. And you're not a leader with a stick at the top, you've actually a part of the team as equals, making a decision and I guess having constructive conversations. What are the pros and cons on what we've got right now? What are the pros and cons on this other piece of software that we're potentially looking at? What's the journey going to look like if we did do a transition, and know that if we're going to make a transition, we're going to commit to that decision for at least a 2-year period. So having them on the journey does wonders. They feel valued. They feel like they're an actual part of this business that's growing. You've got their buy-in, and even better, when you've got the team in there helping you make the decision, they understand why it's a great idea to get it on board. And so for that reason, it's so much easier for them to get their colleagues, their team members, and the people around them on board because you've got buy-in. So it's not something as the business owner you've got to sell to the team and say, look, trust me, this idea is going to be better than the last one I had last month or the month before. It's like they've got their colleagues buy-in on why this particular change or this particular software is going to be good for everybody. And so that kind of touches on culture, which I was useless at the start, being just a very black and white numbers person. But touches on what helped develop culture. It touches on how to actually make a decision because you've got so many different people coming from different perspectives. And I mean, how a business owner uses software to run reports to get the pulse of a business is very different to how your team members might be putting data into a system. And so getting a holistic view as you make decisions on what you should be using was super key. But equally key and semi-related to that would be you can have the greatest piece of software sitting in the market, but if the team isn't using it or your processes aren't being followed, it's completely pointless. There's a really key part about understanding how to communicate with a team that is just so important for any business owner to master. Whether it's communication on expectations, communications on why something's valuable or why something's important, or even just basic training in how to use things properly, and don't just chuck a piece of software on someone's lap and go figure it out. You've got to take the team, or even the clients, if it's a piece of software that you want the clients to use, you've got to take them on the journey with you. And again, a little bit like understanding how to deliver value. You've got to be empathetic. You've got to be able to put yourself in their shoes and understand why will this matter to them. And so I guess once you can do that, that's probably what you've got to do. So look, that's kind of 1 and 2 kind of wrapped up.
Yep.
A third key, a third semi-related to the first two. It was from day one, it was important to build a business and not a job. Hence why I think it was important in everything all the businesses I've started, have a name that kind of says what you do, but as short as possible. And then understand how to replicate what you do. No two people are going to do exactly the same job in exactly the same way. It does take a bit of patience and a bit of faith to trust that whoever you've taken on to be part of your team will do a good job and will do it the same way as you. And look, that's where it becomes really important to make sure you've got the right checklists, processes, and that whatever systems, processes, checklists you create are actually used. But it also opened up some interesting lessons on making sure you've got the right software that reports on the right metrics you need to use. And a specific example on that, for many years, like Asana was the shining light and the cool piece of software that everyone loved to use. Good for tasks and all of this sort of thing.
Yep.
But, and as much fun as it was to use across multiple platforms, as far as at the time we were using it, it was impossible to run a report and say like, what BASs are still overdue? Or which client haven't we spoken to for had a conversation with for the last 2 months? Or what April management reports have not been sent out to clients yet? It wasn't possible as a leader to get that high level information that I needed to get the pulse of the business. And so that was one of the decisions on why we moved on from that piece of software to other things. Because if you're going to lead, you need to be able to get your metrics basically instantly these days to know the health of your business and the health of your client base.
Very true. Very true. And I think some of the great things that I've just heard then, and it's an interesting one because I still remember chatting to maybe one of my podcasts last year. I spoke to Mike McHenry from Seamless, and he spoke about the importance of governance. So when you're putting in a new process or a system, it's one thing to put a process and a system in place. And what you spoke about then was just gold in terms of asking the team, which is then empowering the team. You're getting buy-in, you're getting ownership. So you're ticking all those boxes. But how do you make sure that the team is going to continue to use the process in the system? And that was a really interesting one that he spoke about. It was like, and it just triggered me back to that, maybe 12 months ago where I thought, yeah, look, and he spoke about the importance of governance, and you've still got to, empower, but then you've got to have those checking mechanisms to make sure that you're still using it, because the challenge in today's world is, yes, we're growing. We're bringing in different team members from different firms. They've got different ideas. They come with different software. And suddenly, I've been involved in firms that suddenly they're using 3 or 4 different software pieces. It's like, what the hell? Because they haven't had their governance in place to actually check things. So suddenly everyone's doing things differently. So that's time that you're losing, and that's profit that's going out the door.
Totally. Time, profit, accuracy. Yeah, it's a mishmash of things if you can't report on it. So
yeah, correct.
So path to go down.
Spot on. So with systems being a major part of your growth, which is fantastic, and you spoke about at the start about the 2 key things that you learned was processes, controls. What can you advise to everyone listening in terms of they're moving into call it a new financial year pretty soon? It's hard to believe we're coming to the end of another one. But for all team members to continue that ongoing governance to ensure the right systems are in place, what can you what sort of advice can you give to how you've done that in the past to then continue? It's not a one-off, is it? That you can't just go to the team and say it's a one-off. It's got to be continuous and it's got to be consistent, like leadership and management. Is there anything you can share with team members of how you've done that?
There's 2 different aspects with which I view this upon, and I think if it's that critical, if that particular process or governance piece is that critical, there needs to be a way you can automatically run a report on it inside your business. If it's getting all BASs done on time, if it's a certain checklist that has been completed before a certain lodgement goes out, it needs to be absolutely transparent and something that you can see from anywhere at any place in time. One of I guess the second way to view it is one of the things I've started doing over the last 3 years is figuring out if I was to be detached from the business for a 4 to 6 week period and have absolutely no connection to the internet and be completely offline, if I was to sit on an island for 6 weeks and all I could get was a daily update summarized on one piece of paper, what numbers would I want to see on that piece of paper to know that everything's okay? And viewing things through that lens, which could be things like, oh, did we have any customer complaints today? How many problems did we solve? How many invoices went out? And try and, I guess, break the business down, or even like, yeah, there's probably some compliance pieces on there. It'll be unique for every business. It's not a standard report or anything like that we create or anything that we do, but it's a lens through which I try and run the business to understand the health of what I've got in a very succinct way, but then also make sure that any metric I choose as a key metric on that is something that can be found click of a button and isn't a laborious spreadsheet that takes someone hours and hours of work to put together.
Yeah, look, and in today's world, and look, there's no doubt all of us still use spreadsheets for various things, but in terms of
Totally, yeah,
your metrics you just spoke about, there's so much can easily be delivered by the click of a finger using a software package. I agree 100%. And that then gives you the ability to take action quicker as well. So instead of waiting for numbers, at the end of the day, they should be live to us, accessible everywhere and wherever we are. And that's, you spoke about before, you were running, a business in Sydney, obviously a great part of the world at Motorvale, but then coming into North Sydney and then coming into, let's say, Melbourne. You can only expand like that and grow if you've got really, really good systems and reporting systems as well.
Yeah, totally. Oh, and one of the thoughts you triggered then was once you figure out what your metrics are, once you get good at that, you then start, rather than going for live indicators, you then start looking for lead indicators. Like rather than having a metric that says, oh, how many sales did we close this week? It's like, what have we got sitting in the opportunity funnel? You kind of go one step before in your metrics. So rather than going, oh, how are we today? It's like, let's have a look at some metrics that'll tell us how we're going to do down in the future. And so, yeah, that was an interesting maneuver too, as you try to master, I guess, understanding the dials and the dashboards in your business as to what you should be focusing your time on.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, mate, as we're coming to the end of a financial year, I know, that's why it's a funny thing. It's brought me back to a lot of the key things that I used to do under my coaching company, GPL. So when we used to talk about systems and processes, and they were the number one and two key things to growth, because if you can get those right and you can continue to tweak them, that just increases profit and increases time, which gives you the ability to increase revenue.
Yeah.
Let's say we're going into, there's always been a lot of conjecture around, planning days with team members and whether it should be half a day, 2 days, whether it should be in the office, whether it should be out of the office. What do you think? What's your thought process on this do you bring the team in? At what elements do you bring the team in? I know we could probably spend another half an hour talking about this, but I believe it's a really important part to get buy-in and set direction and vision and mission and values and all these little key things. But what's your thoughts on it?
Look, I agree with it totally. I think it's also your opportunity as a business owner to show appreciation to your team. Like if you can take your team somewhere nice for a day outside of the office, give them a special experience, it's just another way you can build the rapport and build the culture inside your business. So obviously you tailor the content when you've got everybody there to be appropriate content for what everybody's there, and you might have different groups. What you're talking about with the board will obviously be different to what you're talking about with the operational side of things with your team, but I'm a big fan of it, and I think you've got to set aside time to plan otherwise the busyness of your day to day just absorbs you. And then, like we said at the start, summertime's disappeared, and here we are in winter all yet again. And time disappears too quick unless you make the time to plan, reflect on how far you've come, but also set some good lofty goals for the year ahead too. And the best way to achieve a goal is to make sure everybody knows what you're trying to achieve. Like if your team knows you're out there looking for clients, it's amazing how just by letting them know what you're looking for, that their ears will prick up at just any little thing that they might overhear here, there, or wherever else. And I think having your team off-site so that you've just got clear headspace, it does do something special going somewhere. But also having their buy-in to understand what you're trying to do rather than just being super busy all the time. It's absolute gold. So I'd encourage it.
Yeah, good. And I agree 100%. I think the ability to go off-site, no phones, no interruptions, as you mentioned before, the ability to say thank you as well. But I think the critical part you just mentioned then was the ability to plan. Because if you don't plan, as a lot of business leaders have done in certain books, you'll plan to fail because you're not planning to succeed. And
Totally.
we can only, we can't. It's a bit like, I don't know, sort of, it's a bit like getting married and planning a family. You can't do that by yourself. You've got to do that with other people. You've got to do that with your partner or your wife, or so therefore you've got to share. You've got to be a little bit more vulnerable. You've got to start doing the things that people will get engaged with, and it's emotional. So you've got to drive that emotional stage. So I agree 150% with what you just said then, and hopefully everyone listening to this can take a little bit of that and say, right, how do I start doing that? We're into June. Let's not do our planning in July. Let's not do our planning in August, because you know what? You're already 2 months into the new financial year. So find the time even to put aside a day and get out there and have some fun and make it fun.
Yeah. But I mean, look, if you're listening to this in July, don't wait till next year either. It's like the sooner the better. Have a plan. Don't worry about if the gun's gone off and the race has started. Make sure you got a plan before you get too far down the path.
Brilliant. Love it. Mate, parting comment before we wrap up? Got any parting comments?
Any parting comments? No, it's been quite enjoyable. It's been good to have a chat.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, no, I was just going to, as soon as I said that, and based on what you just said, then don't wait for the starting gun, it was like, we can use the old Nike saying, just do it. It's just, and
totally.
that's what came into my brain straight away. So it was quite funny. But mate, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us on
Absolute
Drive Time.
pleasure.
It's been refreshing again to listen to you, to delve deep into your knowledge well, and provide everyone listening the opportunity to say, how do I start approaching the new financial year with a different set of eyes? And that's been fantastic. So to all of you guys listening, thank you again for listening to another episode of Drive Time. Look out for the next episode. To Simon Allsop, thank you very much. Catch you next time.
Thanks, Paul.